Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. Postscript. B. Finished after Part 16. This is the end of Mogok Sayadaw's Dhamma Talks. I hope that in the future some Burmese Buddhists will come forward to translate the entire talks to preserve the Dhamma. Here, I also want to sort out some misunderstandings regarding these translations. These could come from Burmese Buddhists who have the chance to listen to and read Mogok talks in Burmese. I have to say it again, these translations come from my own transcriptions of Sayadaw's talks on discs. See the translator's notes. I have written 4 books. Only Mogok talks are the most difficult for me, and they also take a lot of my time for tasks such as transcriptions, translations, checking with some suttas, corrections, etc. It takes some years to finish them. Sayadaw gives his talks mostly in short sentences and very rarely uses pronouns. Therefore, I add some pronouns to the sentences where needed. The readers can also distinguish some of my notes and contemplations from Sayadaw's ones by the written marks of brackets, and without these brackets are Sayadaw's own words. There are 2 kinds of monks whose contributions made the Dhamma and the world shine brightly. The first kind is someone who has great learning in Dhamma and also penetrates the Dhamma with practice, such as Ledi Sayadaw and Mogok Sayadaw. Their teachings on Sakha Dhamma help Buddhists to understand the Dhamma profoundly and clearly. The second kind is someone without much great learning, but who possesses a lot of experience and knows how to live the holy life according to the Buddha's instructions. For example, the Thai forest tradition, such as Law Pu Sao Kantasilo, Long Pu Mun Buridato, and their disciples, Long Por Cha, etc. We need both types of monks for the Buddha Dharma to last long and for the welfare of human beings, especially Buddhists. Without Dharma education and knowledge, humans don't know how to behave and live their lives, leading to more sufferings and problems in their present lives and future. They also don't know how to solve human and environmental problems and disasters. If we observe animals, whether as pets or for consumption, we will see or discover human nature and habits in them. Most humans think we are superior to them. So we exploit and misuse them for sensual pleasures. We will never realize that in the future, we ourselves are sure to encounter these kinds of fate and misfortune. In the future, humans born as animals will suffer more than before because no more natural forests exist and water is polluted and poisonous. So most humans, after death, will end up in animal farms for meat production, and the violent, cruel humans will be in hell realms. The doors to hell and ghost realms are also widely open for humans, to welcome them. Human beings are more and more greedy with anger and ill will than before. Disputes and conflicts are becoming more violent and cruel. Humans have developed brains but mostly misuse them. They only know how to indulge in sensual pleasures and do not know how to develop their minds to find true happiness and peace. Human evolution is only possible with Dharma education and training of body, speech, and mind. Material progress and indulgence in sensual pleasures alone are not real evolution and progress. A mind defiled and rotten inside will never lead to true progress and happiness. Instead, it creates problems, dangers, destructions, and sufferings. These things are also mentioned in some of the suttas. At the time of doomsday, even if humans can survive, it is a natural disaster. So why can't humans survive and escape from man-made dangers, disasters, and sufferings? Human destiny is in their own minds and hands. How you view, think, and act is what you are. This is the law of Kamma and Dharma nature. It's interesting to study the Kakavati Si Hanada Sutta with contemplation. There, when human moral behavior plunges to the lowest level, It is the darkest time in human history. At that time, the human lifespan is only 10 years. Is it possible? Why not? At that time, human beings were more like animals. A female would give birth to many babies like an animal. They would grow up quickly like cats and dogs. The interesting part is the 7 Days War of humans. It might be the greatest world war, which would wipe out 90% of humans on Earth. Their weapons of mass destruction could excel those of today's man. The arms competition of superpowers shows their foolishness and shamelessness. In these darkest times, humans don't have any moral standards at all. All the 10 wholesome dharmas disappear, and unwholesome dharmas prevail. After the darkest time in human history, 10% of the world population starts to correct their wrong views, thinking, and actions. With good moral standards and behavior, the lifespan increases back again slowly to many thousands of years. And then it falls back to 10 years. At the time when the human lifespan is 80,000 years, Buddha Metteyya will arise in the world. Nowadays, Buddhists who want to meet him should diligently practice sila, samadhi, and panna. The best way is to end dukkha in this sasana. We should not take the incidents mentioned in this sutta as myth. Some phenomena already happened in the past, and the future ones are predictions of the Buddha. If we have common sense, it is not difficult to understand them. These are according to the law of nature, Dhamma nature. Today, world society and natural phenomena all support it. The 3 lokas mentioned by the Buddha are connected. The Sankhara loka is the superior one. One protects oneself and protects others and nature. This is an unfailing truth. It is beneficial to use some suttas to contemplate human nature, its situation, and essence. What are humans doing and searching for on this earth? This is a very important question for every human being. This is related to human well-being, happiness, and peace. There are 2 types of human beings, blind worldlings and wise worldlings. They have nothing to do with their worldly knowledge, status, and wealth, such as politicians, economists, billionaires, scientists, AI technicians, etc. This mostly depends on Dharma knowledge and Dharma education. Therefore, the most important question for humans is, what are humans searching, questing for? The answer is also not an easy one because the human defiled mind is complicated and extensive. The human quest and search have many levels, from the coarsest, most inferior to the most refined and noblest things. This is similar to human views on blessings, mangalas. It depends on their interests and desires. The results will differ, from the lowest hell to permanent peace and happiness. In the same way as the teaching of Mangala, the quest, search, parayasana, of Dharma teaching, only the Buddha can give the clear-cut answer. The following reflections are based on Sayadaw U Uttama's talks and some suttas. In the Majjhima Nikaya is the Ariyapariyasana Sutta, the Noble Search, Sutta No. 26. There the Buddha mentioned 2 kinds of search, ignoble search and noble search. What is ignoble search? Someone, being himself subject to birth, seeks what is subject to birth. In relation to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, he seeks what is also subject to these things. What is the noble search? Someone, being himself subject to birth, understands the dangers and seeks the unborn security from bondage, i.e., Nibbāna. In relation to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement, he seeks the unaging, unailing, deathless, sorrowless, undefiled security from bondage, Nibbāna. And then the Buddha continues to talk about his search for enlightenment. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Fours, is a sutta called the Quests, Sutta No. 255. Here the Buddha only mentioned 4 of them, excluding birth and sorrow. In the Maggasamyutta, a group of suttas mentioned searchers. There the Buddha mentions 3 searchers: the search for sensual pleasures, the search for existence, and the search for a holy life. The above lists of ignoble search and noble search are as far as I know in the suttas. I am not a scholar monk, so my knowledge about them is very limited. I will use the sutta lists to contemplate them roughly. If we contemplate on Dhamma deeply and extensively, there is a lot to do, because human kilesas have no limits. Therefore, their dukkhas also have no limitations. The ignoble search in the Aryapariyasana Sutta includes 6 kinds: birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. From birth to death, humans can't stop it. But sorrows and defilements can be overcome by knowledge of Dhamma and Dhamma practice. So, Dhamma education is very important. I am more interested in the 3 searches in the Maggasamyutta. There is a lot for contemplation in this list. These are the search for sensual pleasures, for existence, and for a holy life. If we investigate them, the search for sensual pleasures to holy life becomes more and more difficult. The searches for sensual pleasures to existence overlap, e.g., someone desires to become a U.S. president, a millionaire, billionaire, etc. In this present life, humans seeking sensual pleasures are too extensive and complicated. No other living beings excel them in this, and the same goes for becoming. Therefore, their minds are more defiled than other beings. But there are exceptions if they use wholesome ways to get the results, and not only for themselves but also to help others, e.g., a U.S. president and a billionaire. If they get what they desire in unwholesome ways and harm others, it is like honey on the tip of the razor blade. Seeking to become is very difficult to give up, and only arahants are immune from it. Next, I want to describe a story that really inspires me and demonstrates the powers of the Buddha and Dharma. Most Buddhists are also familiar with this story, but only a part of it and not the whole story. This is about the 30 princes who were the sons of King Mahakosala. Their first encounter with the Buddha is mentioned in a Dhammapada story. The Buddha, after his enlightenment, spent the first Vassa near Varanasi. After the Vassa, he continued his journey toward Uruvela. On the way, he went to a certain forest grove and sat down at the root of a certain tree. At that time, a group of 30 princes, the Bhadavajas, were entertaining themselves with their wives in the forest grove. One of them had no wife, so they brought a prostitute. As they were heedlessly entertaining themselves, the prostitute took the man's belongings and ran off. They were searching for the woman and saw the Buddha sitting at the root of a tree. They went to the Buddha and asked him if he had seen a woman. Instead of giving an answer, the Buddha asked a counter-question. What did they want with a woman? They told the Buddha what happened to them. The Buddha asked him an important question. What do you think, young men, which is better for you? That you search for a woman or that you search for yourselves? They gave the right answer that it was better to search for themselves. Then the Buddha gave them a graduated talk, a talk on Dana, Sila, and on heaven. He proclaimed the drawbacks of degradation in, and defilements in sensuality and the reward of renunciation. When their minds were ready, malleable, unhindered, exultant, and confident, he proclaimed the 4 noble truths. At the end of the talk, all entered the stream. They entered the Buddhist monk order with the Ehi Bhikkhu formula. Then the Buddha resumed his journey to Uruvela to teach the 3 Kassapa brothers. The above story of the 30 bhikkhus continues in the Animattagga Samyutta, the 30 bhikkhus Sutta, Sutta No. 13. Now at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, these 30 bhikkhus from Pava went to see the Buddha. They were forest dwellers, alms food eaters, rag robe wearers, and triple robe users. The Buddha gave the following talk to them. Samsara is without a discoverable beginning. With ignorance and craving, the first point is not discerned of beings roaming and wandering. The stream of blood that they have shed when they were beheaded as they roamed and wandered through this long course is more than the water in the 4 great oceans. For a long time, they have been cows, goats, buffaloes, sheep, deer, chickens, etc., in the same way. For a long time, they have been arrested as burglars, highwaymen, and adulterers, and when they were beheaded, the stream of blood they shed was greater than the water in the 4 great oceans. Samsara is so long without a discoverable beginning. It is good for them to be liberated from it. At the end of the talk, all became arahants. Humans measure wealth and treasure by how much sensual pleasure one can enjoy, how much money one can make, and how much power one has. According to the Buddha, these things are filthy pleasures, without essence, and empty. They take these things as real happiness. So humans have disputes, conflicts, and fights with each other to get these things. Wealth, treasure, and happiness as defined by the Buddha are as follows. Treasure. 1. Faith is a man's best treasure. 2. Dharma practiced well brings happiness. 3. Truth is the best or the sweetest of tastes. 4. Life with wisdom is the best living. From Vipassanā, wealth or noble growth. There are 5 kinds of wealth. 1. Faith, on Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha and law of Kamma. 2. Virtuous behavior, at least 5 precepts or 10 wholesome Dhamma. 3. Learning, sutta, on Buddha Dhamma or Dharma education. 4. Generosity, Kagga. 5. Wisdom. From the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fives, Sutta No. 47. 7 noble wealth or treasures. There are 7 kinds of noble wealth or treasure. 1. Faith. 2. Virtuous behavior. 3. Moral shame. 4. Moral dread. 5. Learning. 6. Generosity. 7. Wisdom. From Anguttara Nikaya, Books of Sevens, Sutta No. 5 and 6. The Buddha states that sensual pleasures, worldly wealth, treasure, and power, provide little gratification, much suffering, and despair, and the danger in them is great and more. The Buddha compares the following similes to sensual pleasures. These are, -1. The simile of the skeleton or bone 2. The simile of a piece of meat 3. The simile of the grass torch 4. The pit of coals 5. The dream 6. Borrowed goods 7. Fruits on a tree 8. The butcher's knife and block 9. The sword stake 10. The snake's head. See the simile of the snake, Sutta No. 22, and its detailed explanations in the Patalaya Sutta, Sutta No. 54, both in the Majjhima Nikaya. It is important for every human to contemplate the dangers, problems, destruction, and suffering of sensual pleasures. I will only use 1 or 2 of them relating to today's human situations briefly. Their power and suffering are not small things. A dog, overcome by hunger and weakness, gets a meatless bone smeared with blood. This dog gnaws the bone for some time and reaps weariness and disappointment. It is the same as today. Humans' excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures never satisfies their hunger and thirst for them. So humans, with their brains and worldly knowledge, seek ways to indulge more and more. They never have contentment. Therefore, the earth is becoming more and more polluted with climate changes, and many problems, dangers, and disasters arise. It provides much suffering and despair. The simile of a vulture, heron, or hawk seizing a piece of meat and flying away. The others pursue it and peck and claw at it. If the vulture or hawk does not quickly let go of that meat, it could incur death or deadly suffering. Similarly, if we observe today's world at international levels, we see a lot of competition in many sectors for sensual pleasures, wealth, and power, etc. There are a lot of disputes, conflicts, wars, arms races, trade wars, and territorial disputes, etc. It becomes more and more violent, cruel, and destructive to human life, properties, and the natural environment. The Buddha calls sensual happiness in sensual pleasures low, vulgar, the way of worldlings or fools, ignoble and vain. Therefore, all these searches, quests, and seeking are ignoble, inferior, and will never end, making the human mind more defiled and rotten. On the other hand, the noble search will lead to true happiness, which never changes and transcends all suffering. With the noble quests, we can achieve the noble wealth or growth and attain the 7 noble wealth or treasures. Every human being on earth, day in and day out, is getting closer to aging, sickness, death, and rebirth. All these natural processes are very painful and unpleasant. Everyone will encounter them. The most important moments are near death and rebirth. To have a good death and rebirth is very important. To achieve this, at least we should possess the noble growth, which will lead to a good death with a good rebirth, or even could transcend death by attaining the 7 noble treasures. I hope these translations of Mogok Dhamma may help people on the way to true happiness and peace. I will end my work with a Dhammapada verse in the Appendix for contemplation. Verse 28. When the wise person drives out heedlessness with heedfulness, having climbed the high tower of discernment, sorrow-free, he observes the sorrowing crowd. As the enlightened man, having scaled a summit, sees the fools on the ground below. May all being be well and free from suffering. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. Chance and Duty, Appendix B, finished after Part 16. The following Dhamma reflection is based on a talk by Sayadaw Uttamo, S.A. Garing, who is a Dhamma genius. In the Dhammapada, Papavaga, evil, the first one is verse 116. Verse 116. Abhitaritha kalyane. One should make haste in doing good deeds. Papa sitam nivaraye. One should restrain one's mind from evil. Dandanhi karoto punam. For the mind of one who is slow in doing good. Papasmim ramati mano. Tends to take delight in doing evil. Verse 117. If a man does evil, he should not do it again and again. He should not take delight in it. The accumulation of evil leads to suffering. Verse 118. If a man does what is good, he should do it again and again. He should take delight in it. The accumulation of merit leads to happiness. Verses 119 and 120. Even an evil person may still find happiness so long as his evil deed does not bear fruit. But when the evil deed does bear fruit, he will meet evil consequences. Even a good person may still meet suffering so long as his good deed does not bear fruit. But when it does bear fruit, he will enjoy the benefits of his good deed. Verse 121. One should not think lightly of doing evil, imagining, a little will not affect me. Just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain, so also, the fool is filled up with evil, by accumulating it little by little. Verse 122. One should not think lightly of doing good, imagining, a little will not affect me. Just as a water jar is filled up by falling drops of rain, so also, the wise one is filled up with merit, by accumulating it little by little. All the above verses have connections. I will only take the first one, verse 116, for contemplation. Dhammapada verses are Dharma treasures for living beings, especially for humans. Because the human realm is the main center for doing all kinds of wholesome and unwholesome actions and wandering around elsewhere according to the law of karma. There are 4 Dharma points in verse 116. These are, make haste in doing good deeds, restrain one's mind from evil. If the mind is slow in doing good, it tends to take delight in doing evil. The first 2 are related to human nature and the others to mind nature. The mind affects human nature and action, and for human welfare and happiness, the Buddha with great compassion exhorts us on how to live our lives and develop the mind. Mostly, humans are slow to do goodness but easy to do badness because they have latent defilements. So, every human, for one's own and others' welfare and happiness, should do good and restrain one's mind from doing bad. Therefore, the verses are related to unwholesome and wholesome dharmas and their results of suffering and happiness. So, it is related to the law of karma, which is the basic view of Dharma. Its scope of view is quite extensive, from hells to the Arupa Brahma world, and including Nibbāna, which transcends both negative and positive dharmas. Both of them have many levels, from coarser to refinement. The mind is used to inclining toward negative directions. So, if having the chance to do good, quickly embark on it. By pulling or waiting for time, one will miss the chance. For unwholesome actions, it's also the same with restraining the mind. If not, it leads to suffering. To stop suffering and develop happiness is also a human's duty. Because everyone desires happiness and freedom from suffering. Buddhists are the most fortunate humans on earth because we have the chance for Dharma education and training, which other faiths don't have. Do not take the results of unwholesome and wholesome dharmas as insignificant. The profit is more than the deposit. Just observe the happiness in celestial realms and Brahma realms, which have been achieved on earth. For unwholesomeness, see the results of the 4 woeful existences. Ledi Sayadaw had said before as follows, for one life endeavor with Dharma practice, which can overcome all the samsaric sufferings, more importantly the apayas dukkha's. And why should we not make an effort for great happiness? This is quite true. Only Buddhists have this chance. They encounter the 5 rarities. See my translation of the 5 rarities, in part 14, in the rounds of samsara. The Sarandada Sutta, Sutta No. 143, Book of Fives, Anguttara. There are also 8 inopportune moments mentioned by the Buddha in a discourse. Inopportune moments, Sutta No. 29, the Book of Eights, Anguttara Nikaya. There are all 9 moments beings have to pay serious attention to. 8 of them are the inopportune moments and only one is the opportune moment, i.e., encountering the 5 rarities. What is the most important matter for humans? In the Dhammapada, the elephant chapter, Nagavagga, verse 327 is very important to heed. Verse 327. Take delight in heedfulness. Guard your mind well. As an elephant stuck in mire pulls itself out. Pull yourself out of the mire of moral defilements. This is a Dharma instruction for practice. After listening to the teaching, the monks attained arahantship. The instruction has 3 important points. These are: take delight in heedfulness. Guard your mind well. Pull yourself out of the mire of moral defilements. Take delight in heedfulness, appamada. This is not an ordinary heedfulness, but with delight. So with interest and joy, one has to cultivate appamada whether in doing good or mindfulness. Without delight, the practice cannot continue and develop. In one of Bhikkhu Sayadaw's Dharma talks, The 3 Pali Pitakas can be condensed to 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhamma. The 37 factors of enlightenment can be condensed to the Noble Eightfold Path. It also can be condensed as Sila, Samadhi, and Panna. The 3 trainings also can be condensed as Appamada. Appamada is like an elephant footprint. All other animals' footprints can fall into it. In the same way, all wholesome Dharma can fall there. Once King Pasenadi Kosala asked the Buddha, "Is there any one Dharma that leads to well-being and happiness in this life and after?" This was Appamada. All the goodness, wholesome Dharma, is based on heedfulness, and in the same way, all unwholesome actions are based on heedlessness. By knowing the great benefit of Appamada, we can take interest and joy or delight in developing it. The importance of heedfulness can also be seen in taking the 5 precepts. After the precept, the monk reminds the lay people with the words, Appamadina Sampadetha. This is being heedful in goodness. The Buddha, every day after alms round, came back and exhorted the monks on the 5 Dullabha Dharma, the 5 rarities or the one opportune moment, ending with the same words. Why does the human world have a lot of problems and sufferings? These are the results of heedlessness, pamada. Guard your mind well. Here, guarding the mind is emphasized as very well, meaning all the time. Because humans have 2 kinds of enemies, internal and external. Therefore, humans face dangers all the time. The 6 external dacoits come inside to stimulate the inner enemies, kilesas, to harm the mind. So, the yogi has to be alert all the time. Therefore, guarding the mind is very important in daily life. In Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fours, Sutta No. 117, a discourse called Guarding, Araka, the Buddha teaches the monks that for one's own welfare, one should practice heedfulness, appamada, mindfulness, and guarding of the mind. Pull yourself out of the mire of moral defilements. This is the most important point of the verse. Only an arahant can completely pull himself, herself out of the mire of kilesas. There are 10 anusaya kilesas, and the most important and dangerous one is Sakkaya Ditthi, which sinks living beings into the 4 woeful existences. Ledi Sayadaw refers to it as Atta Ditthi, self-view. Combined with craving, tanha, it becomes Ditthi Tanha. Some serious wrong views are born from it. It can lead to any evil actions that humans could commit, such as the 5 heavy kamas. Its cruelty knows no limit. We can see its atrocity and destruction at the international levels. Therefore, eradicating Sakkaya Ditthi is the most important chance and duty for humans. A Brahma god came to the Buddha and gave his view with a simile. Humans should eradicate sensual desire and lust, kamaraga, as quickly as possible, like someone whose head hair was on fire or who was hit by a spear in the chest. So the person should first extinguish the fire or pull out the spear and treat the wound. Because the Brahma god had a very long life and had seen humans and devatas, which can include animals, live their lives very short. But the Buddha corrected him by saying that eradicating Sakkaya Ditthi should come first. We can know the dangers and sufferings created by the defiled and rotten mind with Ditthi Tanha by studying and observing the DA processes of the mind in daily life. We created the 4 painful existences from the human realm. Therefore, samsara is very frightening. Living beings arrive at the 4 painful existences, apayas, by the mind. Arriving at peaceful Nibbāna is also by the mind. When not guarding the mind, all unwholesome dharmas arise, increase, and lead to suffering. By guarding the mind, all wholesomeness arises, increases, and leads to Nibbāna, the great peaceful happiness. Our minds are sinking in the kilesa maya. Therefore, the Buddha exhorts us to pull ourselves out from the kilesa mud. Only then do we become the masters of the mind. Otherwise, we become slaves of the mind and encounter great suffering in the whole round of existence. Therefore, the most important matter for humans is to eradicate Sakkaya Ditthi first. Now we have encountered the opportune moment of the 5 Dullabha Dhammas and should not miss the chance and duty for the true peace and happiness of Nibbāna. For all living beings, what is important and not important depends on their defilements. At last, every worldly matter comes to an end and becomes empty and void, but the results of their actions will follow behind them. Human knowledge and material progress, if not used properly and wisely, can create suffering and destruction, as exemplified by the 2 atomic bombs on Japan during the Second World War. In the future, how humans use AI technology is also very important. Its dangers and destructions are waiting for humans in the future to come. Nothing is worthy of clinging. Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. Dhamma Reflection, Choice and Chance, finished after Part 16. Dhamma education, its knowledge, and practice are the most difficult things to come by in the whole samsara and cosmos. Without it, humans can't transcend dukkha and are unable to solve human-created sufferings and problems. Without Dhamma knowledge, every human becomes a blind and foolish worldling. Otherwise, they would become wise and intelligent worldlings who could live their lives without harming others and nature, good for this life and the future to come. Blind and foolish worldlings only see one side of a coin, but wise and intelligent ones see both sides and never get lost. The wise, the sages, and noble beings discern the whole picture. Therefore, they never create problems and sufferings for themselves, others, and nature. The fools are the opposite. We can observe all the negative results in today's world up to international levels. Why is Dharma education the most important in human education and knowledge? Because it teaches and trains humans to become virtuous, intelligent, wise, and noble beings. Worldly education and knowledge mostly teach and train humans for a livelihood and indulgence in sensual pleasure. Most humans only have short-sighted views, outlooks, and thinking. They get lost in their self, atta, views and defilements. So they nourish the self and defilements all the time. Dharma teaches people to become intelligent, wise, and noble so that they see nature clearly and profoundly. For example, they know about the common characteristics of inconstancy, suffering, and the non-self nature of phenomena, which lead him to wholesome directions. Most importantly, they understand the nature of the mind and its working or active process. Therefore, the education of the mind is the most important knowledge for humans. Without this knowledge and training, humans create suffering for themselves, others, and nature. They can't solve human problems properly and wisely. Humans are closer to their minds than any other things, animate or inanimate. They live with them all the time from birth to death and beyond in the whole of samsara. Therefore, the Buddha is the greatest of all teachers, Satta Deva Manusanam, teacher of gods and humans. The mind can make a man become a fool or wise. An untrained mind leads to chaos, problems, and suffering. A trained mind leads to harmony, peace, and happiness. An untrained mind is human's evil friend and enemy. A trained mind is human's best friend and savior. We cannot measure human dignity and greatness with status, power, money, and sensual pleasure. For worldlings, these things are dangerous because their minds are obsessed with defilements. The following are about the nature of the mind as taught by the Buddha in the Dhammapada verses. From the Cittavagga, verse 33. Quivering, wavering, hard to guard, to hold in check, the mind. The sage makes it straight, like a fletcher, the shaft of an arrow. Verse 34. Like a fish pulled from its home in the water and thrown on land. This mind flips and flaps about, to escape Mara's sway. Mara refers to defilements or the evil one. Verse 35. Hard to hold down, nimble, alighting wherever it likes, the mind. Its taming is good. The mind well tamed brings ease. Verse 36. So hard to see, so very, very subtle. Alighting wherever it likes, the mind. The wise should guard it. The mind protected brings ease. Verse 37. Wandering far, going alone, bodiless, lying in a cave, the heart, the mind. Those who restrain it, from Mara's bonds they'll be freed. Pipe. Verse 42. Whatever an enemy might do to an enemy, or a foe to a foe, the ill-directed mind can do to you, even worse. Pipe. Verse 43. Whatever a mother, father, or other kinsman might do for you, the well-directed mind can do for you. Even better. The mind has great power, greater than Einstein's equation E equals mc2. The negative energy that can wipe out the human race on Earth is like hell's. The positive power that can bring harmony, happiness, peace, and transcend all sufferings is like paradises. One of the important points to remember is that the untrained or worldling's mind is full of defilements, and evil delights in it. Dhammapada verse 116. Be quick in doing what's admirable. Restrain your mind from what's evil. When you're slow in making merits, evil delights the mind. So we should guard our minds all the time. If not, it becomes the enemy. Because the mind will be controlled and influenced by the three unwholesome roots of greed, aversion, and delusion. These unskillful minds are our real enemies. They send beings to take rebirths in the four woeful existences, apayas. In the Itavataka, the group of threes, Sutta no. 88, the Buddha mentioned the dangers of them. Greed, aversion, delusion, is an inside stain, inside enemy, inside foe, inside murderer, inside adversary. Greed, aversion, delusion, causes harm. Greed, aversion, delusion, provokes the mind. People don't realize it, as a danger born from within. A person, when greedy, aversive, deluded, doesn't know his own welfare. When greedy, aversive, deluded, doesn't see Dharma, overcome with greed, aversion, delusion. He's in the dark, blind. Ellipsis, 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 ellipsis. So we can see the great dangers and sufferings created by greed, aversion, and delusion. To eradicate them, we need the skillful mind power of heedfulness or sati, which can conquer and overcome them. To deal with these problems, the Buddha taught us how to guard the mind in the Anguttara Nikaya, Sutta no. 117 Araka Sutta, Book of Fours. Someone bent on his welfare should practice heedfulness, mindfulness, and guarding the mind, not become excited by things that provoke lust, not be full of hate toward things that provoke hatred, not be deluded by things that cause delusion, and not be intoxicated by things that intoxicate. The Buddha also taught the four powers, bala, that transcend the five fears with dangers, in the Book of Nines, Sutta no. 5 the Bala Sutta. The four powers are wisdom, energy, blamelessness, sustaining a favorable relationship, Sangaha Vathu. 1 the power of wisdom. One has clearly seen and explored with wisdom the following qualities. A. Unwholesome and reckoned as unwholesome. B. Wholesome as wholesome. C. Blamable as blamable. D. Blameless as blameless. E. Those that are dark as dark. F. Bright as bright. G. Those that should not be cultivated as not to be cultivated. H. Should be cultivated as to be cultivated. I. Those that are unworthy of the noble ones, Aryas, as unworthy. J. Those that are worthy by noble ones as worthy. 2. The power of energy. 1 generates desire to abandon the negative qualities, as unwholesome, blamable, etc., as mentioned above. 1 makes an effort, arouses energy, and applies one's mind to strive for them. 1 generates desire to obtain all the above positive qualities, as wholesome, blameless, etc. 1 makes an effort to strive for them. 3. The power of blamelessness. 1 engages in blameless bodily, verbal and mental action. 4. The power of sustaining a favorable relationship. There are 4 means of sustaining a favorable relationship. A. Giving. B. Endearing speech. C. Beneficent conduct. D. Impartiality. The best gift is the gift of Dhamma. The best speech is teaching Dhamma to those who have an interest. Among beneficial types of conduct are helping people to have faith in the accomplishment of faith, to have virtuous behavior, generosity, and wisdom. Someone who possesses the 4 powers has transcended 5 fears with dangers. These are fear of loss of livelihood, disrepute, timidity in assemblies, fear of death, and fear of a bad destination after death. The Buddha Dharma is very practical and useful in daily life. To have more benefits from Dharma, it needs to reflect or contemplate Dharma from study and experiences. The 4 Sanghaha Vattu are quite important for human societies up to the international level. Nowadays, men need more of these qualities because in this 21st century, there are many man-made human problems and sufferings around the world. Human beings who can develop the 4 powers in societies will live together with harmony, peace, and happiness. Nearly everyone fears death and a bad destination after death. Only with a good death can one have good destinations. Therefore, everyone needs to prepare themselves for this with sila, samadhi, and panna practice. Men calculate loss and profit in worldly matters such as money, power, sensual pleasures, etc. In the same way, Buddhists should calculate loss and profit between mundane and supramundane matters. It is necessary to make a wise choice. Worldlings and noble ones see things differently. Worldlings only think and are concerned about the present life, but noble beings for the present and future to come. There are 3 kinds of relinquishing. But first we have to know, according to the Buddha and noble ones, what is valuable and essential, essence, and what is not. For the worldlings, they are craving and clinging to properties, their bodies, and their livings for sensual pleasure and indulgence. Properties, wealth, and power are subject to change and dangers. Physical bodies are subject to aging, sickness, death, unwholesome results of kammic debts, and other external dangers, etc. How do we use our whole life? Generally speaking, most humans use their whole life based on greed, aversion, and delusion for indulgence in sensual pleasures, all kinds, wealth, power, and fame. So after death, they can't carry anything which is valuable and has essences, only kalesa garbage, and rubbish. Therefore, the doors to hells, the animal realm, and the ghost realm are opening and welcoming them. On the other hand, for the sages, Aryans, and Sattva Arya Savakas, they use their properties and wealth by relinquishing them with generosity and giving up, dana, karga. They would relinquish their bodies with sila and their whole life by living with samatha and vipassana bhavana, samadhi and panna. They are the only wisest people making the true choices. Encountering the Buddha Dharma, It is very important to make the right choices and take the opportunity or chance for the practice. Here, I want to introduce the Sariva, Saravanija, Jataka and its importance for making the right choice and its opportune moment. This Jataka, birth story of the Bodhisattva, is quite well known to nearly all Buddhists, but mostly we overlook its important message by the Buddha. The reason the Buddha told this story is as follows. I based this story on a Dhamma talk by Sayadaw Uttamo, S.A. Garing. A monk went into seclusion and practiced, but he came back without success. The Buddha heard this and admonished him for giving up the practice. He exhorted him for easily giving up the practice, which needed a lot of effort. Encountering the Dhamma and having the chances for the practice was not very easy to come by. It needed a lot of good conditions. If he missed the chances, he would regret it and encounter sorrow, pain, and grief, like the foolish Jula Sariva. Wasting time on things with no value and essence is foolishness. How we spend our time in daily life is the most important question as a human. This is for the welfare of the present life and the future to come. The story. At that time, the Bodhisattva was a wandering jeweler, a street vendor. It seems to be ornamented jewelry and not expensive ones. One time, he and another jeweler named Sariva, i.e., the past life of the reneged monk Devadatta, went to a town called Aratapura to sell the goods. They made an agreement between them. They could not go together at the same time to any designated places for sale. But as soon as one of them left a place after selling his goods, the other could go in for sale. In this town, there was a poor family consisting of an old woman and her small granddaughter. They previously belonged to a rich family. Sariva was the first person who came to their place. When the young girl saw Sariva and his jewel ornaments, she requested her grandma to buy one or two for her. The grandma responded that she had no money to buy it. But the granddaughter told her they had an old bowl in a corner and it could be exchanged for some of the ornaments. Note: in Burma, when we were young, there were some Indians who collected recyclable materials such as aluminium, bottles, papers, etc., in exchange for foods, such as beans, etc. The grandma brought the bowl to Sariva, who checked it by scratching with a needle. With his experience, he at once knew it was a golden bowl worth $100,000. He was a dishonest guy and very greedy, maybe like some politicians and businessmen today. So he said to the grandma it was a useless bowl and not even worth a cent, and he threw the old bowl on the ground and left. In his mind, he had a selfish plan, which was to return and take the golden bowl in exchange for a very cheap ornament. After he left the place, the Bodhisattva arrived there. When the young girl saw his face and manner, she asked the grandma to try again for some ornaments because it seemed to her that the Bodhisattva was a good person. After the Bodhisattva received the bowl and checked it with a needle, he at once told him it was a golden bowl worth $100,000. He did not have enough money to buy it. But the grandma could not believe it and said to him it was his merit because the other man told her that it was a worthless bowl. Therefore, the Bodhisattva could offer them anything he had with him. He told her he had $500 and other ornaments worth another $500. He gave everything he had with him and asked for $8 for the boat fee to cross the river. He took the scale with him as a weapon and quickly left the place. After the Bodhisattva left, Sariva came back very soon, asking for the bowl. The grandma told him that, as he was dishonest and a liar, she had already sold it to the Bodhisattva and showed him the ornaments and the money. As soon as he heard the bad news, his anger exploded, and he behaved like a lunatic. Throwing everything he had on the ground, he grasped his iron scale as a weapon and chased the Bodhisattva as fast as he could. At the bank of the river, the Bodhisattva gave the boatman $8 and asked him to row the boat as quickly as possible to the other side of the river. When Sariva arrived at the river bank, the boat was already in the middle of the river. He was shouting at the boatman to come back for him, but to no avail. Then he continued watching it until it was far away. At that moment, with great remorse, sorrow, pain, and grief, he thought, "I'll never get it." With a broken heart, hot blood spat out from his mouth, and he collapsed and died there. Devadatta's strong grudge started from that life as Sariva to the Bodhisattva until the great being became the Buddha Gautama. This is the danger and suffering of dosa hatred. At the end of the story, the Buddha strongly reminded the monk of the rare chances and difficulties in having a human birth and practicing to transcend dukkha in the round of existence. Therefore, he had to practice diligently to realize the Four Noble Truths in this life, at least having a fixed destination, i.e., entering the stream. Otherwise, he would have great remorse like Sariva, who lost the golden bowl and his life. The Sariva Jataka offers us some important Dhamma points as food for the heart. We should reflect on it wisely for our benefits in worldly and spiritual matters. Most Buddhists know this remarkable story as the Buddha emphasized the honesty of the great being. It is partly true and not the most important point. According to the text, a bodhisattva who cultivates the 10 perfections in his round of existence never tells lies, always maintaining truthfulness, sakka. The Buddha also said someone who tells lies could do any unwholesome actions. We can also discern the dangers of suffering from the 3 unwholesome roots, greed, hatred, and delusion, which burn humans all the time. On the international level, there are a lot of competitions, unwholesome, greediness, hatred, ill will, jealousy, etc., burning human beings like forest fires. Conflicts of war are becoming more violent, bloody, and cruel, with a lot of destruction. For spiritual matters, it is more important. Sariva only lost his golden bowl and life. But for Buddhists, they lose the essence of Dhamma, which is difficult to come by, and if we make the wrong choice, we will miss the chance. And also, it could be a great loss because it's not certain for next time in the future. The future is unknown. There is nothing more important than the ending of dukkha. Most humans are like the following story. A mother hen with its chicks is searching for food in a pile of garbage. Sometime later, a ruby gem comes out from the garbage. It doesn't affect the animals. Later, a small boy who is playing near the area comes near the place and sees it. He picks up the ruby and plays with it, but doesn't know about its worth. A man passes by and sees the boy playing with the gemstone. He asks the boy to give him the gemstone, and he will buy some delicious chocolate bars for him. The boy agrees, and the man gets the precious stone. The analogies. Most humans are like the mother hen and chicks. They are ignorant about Dhamma and its value. Most of them have strong cravings and clinging to power, wealth, fame, and sensual pleasures. Chickens are searching and eating for food all the time. I have had the chance to observe strayed or discarded animals like cats, dogs, pets, and fishes, etc. All of them are having difficulties searching for food to ease their hunger and survive. The small boy playing with the gemstone is like the majority of ordinary Buddhists making merits for the sake of enjoying the results in the future. Practicing yogis who realize the Dhamma are like the man who gets the precious stone. These people are very rare indeed. As Buddhists, we should never forget and always remind ourselves of the 8 faults of inopportune moments, and 8.29 Akāna-suttam, and the 5 rarities, Dullabha Dhammas, and 5.143 Sarandada-suttam. Delight in heedfulness. Watch over your own mind. Lift yourself up. from the hard-going way, like a tusker sunk in the mud. Verse 327, Dhammapada.